Here we go, folks! Today we're looking at what is perhaps the most hated work of animation in recent memory. The Emoji Movie. The Emoji Movie follows Gene, an emoji who's supposed to be meh all day every day. However, he has multiple emotions instead. So after being shunned by society, Gene makes it his mission to find someone who will fix him. Looking at how harsh a response this film got, you would think that it was animated with broken motion capture, released with major scenes missing, and openly encouraged children to consume their own feces. Is this movie the horrendous atrocity legend tells of? Let's have a look. If there's one thing you can't take away from this film, it's the animation. In terms of motion, it's the caliber you'd expect from a 3D animated feature, which at least puts it above another film I kept seeing this one compared to. With many of their character designs simply being faces with arms and legs, it was exceedingly important for them to be expressive. Thankfully, this film had facial animation nailed down. Visually speaking, however, the film has too many settings and not enough to them. Textopolis, the home of the emojis, is a plain cityscape. I get that emojis are typically sorted into grids, but they could have taken more artistic liberty here. According to the film, the face emojis have it the hardest since they're supposed to stay inside the box and express only one emotion. How about giving each kind of emoji a different locale? The food emojis have their own crazy grove, the holiday emojis live in a non-stop party, and then the face emojis are relegated to boring Bricktown. The contrast would give some narrative significance to their locale's plainness. Throughout the film, our characters leap into different apps. Most of them are real ones, such as Candy Crush, Spotify, and YouTube. Despite relying on pre-existing properties, there were interesting ideas used for a couple of them. For instance, photos on Instagram are moments in time you can step into, and Spotify being made up of sound streams that create avatars depending on the song. Unfortunately, these ideas aren't used to their fullest. Instagram only pops up during an unnecessary subplot with Gene's parents, and doesn't hold any significance to the overall story. Spotify at least gives Gene and Jailbreak a moment of bonding. So rather than just having a whale show up at one point, this environment could have been filled out with representations of different songs. Something to give it more variety and visual appeal than colored cubes and bars. Humor-wise, the film errs on the juvenile side. Some of their gags work fine, like Jailbreak imagining Gene blowing up and Poop smacking a fan in a panic, but the rest of the jokes lack wit. They either end up feeling forced, predictable, or just plain random.
Red alert! Red alert!
Anyway, our heroes of the film are Gene, Jailbreak, and High Five. Gene is... he's our protagonist, alright. Honestly, he doesn't have much personality. His main trait is that he has all the emotions any human would have. For an emoji that's supposed to be multifaceted, he's just so... plain. It's also worth noting that he doesn't really grow as a character. He only develops the confidence to be himself within the last 10 minutes, something that should have been a gradual change over the course of the film. He doesn't even face off against the main antagonist. His friends and parents have to do it for him. How lame is that? This would be so much more effective if Gene had the resolve to face our villain by the end, not just sit there bummed out that he got rejected. Jailbreak is our leading lady, a rebellious emoji who would have made for a more interesting protagonist. She left Textopolis to live on the cloud, fed up with the idea that she had to be a princess. Unlike Gene, she develops as the story goes on. She starts out rather cold and uptight, but proves to be warm at heart. There's also a bit of selfishness that she learns to get over, even if it is handled clunkily. Plus, her character speaks to her belief in being who you are. While she begins seemingly ashamed of her roots, the ending implies that she comes to terms with who she is, and no longer hides her princess side. There's more of a contrast in her character than there was with Gene. High Five is simply our comic relief sidekick. He's silly, dramatic, and tends to be obnoxious at times. Regardless, he still has more personality and development than Gene. At first he obsesses over popularity, wanting to become a favorite emoji. With time, and being rescued from deletion, he learns to appreciate his friends. Our villain of the film is Smiler, the two-faced boss of Textopolis. Right from the get-go, you can tell there's something off about her. She at first just seems kooky, but has this subtle sinister air about her. Here's the thing about Smiler though. She's supposed to be the villain because she thinks Gene is a malfunction and wants him deleted. However, her biggest crime is that she's trying to stop their world from being deleted.
Smiler, I think you might be making too much stink out of all this.
Is she, though? Gene's actions do end up putting their world at risk. It'd work better if the malfunctions threaten our world idea was just a ploy to keep herself on top, and if Gene's actions didn't feed into that narrative. That would fit with the theme of being popular versus being genuine, a theme that's mentioned but not really explored. Alright, let's get more into the story of this film, which is where its greatest weaknesses lie. It tried to be something in the vein of Toy Story, Wreck-It Ralph, and Inside Out, which I think is a big reason why people feel so strongly about it. It bears resemblance to these great films, but fails to hit the same caliber of storytelling. How come? Let's start with the kid we follow around outside the phone world. In Inside Out, we had Riley. In this film we have... Honestly, I couldn't remember his name afterward. Apparently it's Alex. The difference between these two is that Riley was a developed character. While having her own interests and personality, like her affinity for hockey and generally happy disposition, she underwent conflicts that anyone can relate to. Family arguments, being depressed about moving house, etc. Alex barely has his own personality. He's a high school boy who's trying to express his feelings to a girl he likes, and ends up being a little awkward at times. That's about it. His lack of development makes him difficult to empathize with, and his story is too bare bones to be interesting. If you can even call it a story. Another major difference between these two films is the relationship between the hidden world and the human world. In Inside Out, the actions of the film's stars, the emotions, weren't independent from Riley's story. They were her emotions, so every move they made directly influenced her decisions. This was made even more effective by having Riley make the dangerous decision to run away from home, which as the film showed, could have led to irreparable mental damage. It felt like a real conflict with real consequences. In the case of the Emoji movie, the relationship between the human world and the phone world is almost non-existent. Alex doesn't come across as an outcast or someone society would look down on for irrational reasons. Even if he was, the mishaps we see him get into are unrelated to that. At most, the actions of the emojis cause Alex minor inconveniences, like having his phone go off in class. On top of that, the big decision that threatens the world of emojis is that he brings the phone back to the store to be deleted. There's no sense of stakes. And for a film that's supposed to be about being yourself, Alex doesn't exactly learn that. All he does by the end is send his crush Gene's multi-emoji face, and they instantly hit it off. Magically developing a relationship over texting? What kind of idiotic animation would ever pull something like that? Jokes and cinema snob impressions aside, the film is so focused on squeezing in name-brand apps that it misses its own point. Emojis are a form of communication, hence the film should revolve around that. In Toy Story, Woody was so obsessed with being the top toy that he lost sight of his more important purpose, making Andy happy. In Inside Out, Joy mistakenly caused a lot of trouble by trying to keep Riley from being sad. Here, Gene could have worked similarly. Have his goal of becoming meh clash with having to help Alex honestly express himself. You know, actually explore the message that you're trying to tell. The Emoji movie was successful commercially, bringing home $218 million against a $50 million budget, but was absolutely hammered by critics. It was called everything from lazy to a soul-crushing disaster to insidious evil. Overall, yeah, it's a mediocre film. I can't pretend it was otherwise. What could have been a strong story of learning to be true to oneself ended up being a largely uninteresting trip through product placements. Its laughs are hit and miss, the messaging feels tacked on, the main character isn't compelling, and the story is a mess of elements that were executed better in other movies. Personally, I think much of the vitriol against the film was rather exaggerated. I mean, for all the film's flaws, at the end of the day, it's a generic kids movie. It could have been worse. Oh, it could have been worse. And that concludes this episode of Anime Ball. Thanks for watching!